The stranger and the creature. The air inside the refugee station was heavy and cold. The walls of metal hummed softly with hidden machines, and the long corridor was lit with pale blue lights that flickered like dying stars. The widow walked slowly, her steps echoing. She carried a small bag of supplies, but her heart carried something heavier: loneliness. Her husband had died in the war, and though the war was over, fear had never left this place. Then she heard it, a sound that froze her blood. Heavy breathing. Not human, it came from the shadows ahead. She stopped, clutching her bag tighter. Her eyes darted around the corridor, searching. The sound grew louder, wet, deep breaths, followed by the scrape of claws against metal. Her body trembled. She stepped back in fear. Out of the shadows, a figure appeared. At first, it looked like a man. A tall human dressed in a dark uniform scarred by travel. His face was tired but calm, and beside him, chained by a thick collar, was something no one in the station had ever seen before. The creature. It was huge, its body a strange mix of flesh and machine. Metal plates covered its back, glowing lines pulsed under its skin, and its eyes, two burning orbs, looked alive with hunger. Its jaws were filled with sharp teeth that glistened when it breathed. The widow gasped and stumbled backward. Her voice cracked. What is that thing? The human raised his hand slowly, palm open like a man calming a wild horse. His voice was steady, almost gentle. "Don't be afraid," he said. "He won't bite." But the widow's heart screamed otherwise. The creature's gaze locked onto her, and she felt as if the air around her turned to ice. Her feet wanted to run, yet her body was frozen. The corridor suddenly felt smaller, the lights dimmer, the silence louder. Behind her, more aliens appeared from the side halls. Refugees, merchants, workers. They saw the creature and shouted in panic. Someone dropped their tools. Someone else pulled a weapon. Children cried. The entire station echoed with fear. The human looked around, unshaken by the chaos. His grip on the chain tightened. "He's not here to hurt you," the human said firmly. "I brought him to keep you safe." Safe? The word sounded like a lie. No one could look at that beast and think of safety. Whispers spread quickly. "It's a weapon. It's a monster. It will kill us all." Guards rushed forward, aiming their rifles. The widow felt her breath quicken. If the guards fired, the creature would go mad. Blood would cover the station. The human stepped in front of the beast, raising his arms. "No!" he shouted. "He is not your enemy." The widow stared at him. Why would a human risk his life for this thing? Was he insane, or was there something more? She had lost everything in the war. She had seen monsters, machines, and soldiers alike destroy her world. But this moment was different. This human was standing alone between fear and destruction, with nothing but his voice to stop the storm. The widow's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to run, to demand answers. But her voice was gone. All she could do was watch. The creature growled, a deep rumble that shook the floor. Its glowing eyes scanned the crowd. But then, it lowered its head. Slowly, obediently, as if the human's words had reached its soul. The guards hesitated, their fingers still on the triggers. The crowd whispered louder, unsure. The widow took a step forward against her own fear. Her voice, shaky but real, finally broke the silence. Why would you bring this thing here?" The human looked at her, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes. Not madness, not arrogance, but sorrow. "Because he has no home," the human said quietly. "Just like us." The words cut through the noise. The widow froze. The creature lifted its glowing eyes to her, and for a moment she didn't see a monster. She saw something else, something broken, something abandoned. The silence grew heavy. No one moved. No one spoke. The human turned to the widow again. "He won't bite," he repeated softly, and for the first time, the widow felt her fear fight against something else, curiosity. The station was never quiet again after the creature arrived. Even when the corridors seemed empty, even when the lights dimmed to night cycle, whispers filled the air. They spread faster than fire, jumping from one mouth to another. "Did you hear it growl? They say it was built in secret labs. My cousin swears it can smell fear." The widow heard them all. She tried to keep her head down, but wherever she walked, people leaned close, speaking in hushed voices. Their eyes darted to the shadows, always watching for glowing eyes in the dark. That night she couldn't sleep. The thin walls of her small room shook with the sound of alarms, short bursts, tests of the system. Then silence again. But in the silence she heard something worse. A deep scraping, like claws dragging slowly along metal. Her hands trembled as she reached for the small lamp beside her bed. Its dim light pushed back the dark, but not her fear. The creature. Is it loose? Her door creaked open. She gasped and pulled back, only to see a neighbor, pale with fear. It's gone, he whispered. The beast is gone. The widow's heart skipped. She grabbed her coat and followed the others rushing through the corridors. Crowds gathered near the holding chamber. The metal bars of the creature's cage stood wide open. Chains lay snapped, twisted like soft wires. The guards argued in panic. It escaped. No. The human set it free. Then where is he now? The widow pushed through the crowd. Her eyes darted across the room, searching. The human was nowhere to be seen. Neither was the beast. A cold shiver crawled down her spine. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed from the far corridor. The human appeared, walking calmly as if nothing had happened. Behind him, the beast followed, its glowing eyes dimmer now, almost tired. Gasps filled the hall. Weapons rose. But the human spoke before anyone could fire. He is not your prisoner, the human said firmly. He is my partner. The widow froze. Partner? How could a human call that thing a partner? The whispers grew sharper, angrier. Some shouted that the human was a liar. Others muttered that war was coming again. The station buzzed like a hive ready to sting. That night the whispers grew darker. Some said the creature was not the only one. That long ago the enemy had made an army of beasts, each one stronger than ships, faster than soldiers. The war had ended before they were unleashed. But if one was here, more could come. The widow sat in the dim corner of the food hall listening, her hands wrapped around a cup of bitter drink. The stories twisted tighter with every word. It is a spy, someone hissed. No, it's bait. The enemy will come to claim it. If the human protects it, maybe he is one of them. The widow wanted to block her ears, but she couldn't. She too remembered the war, the sky burning, the sound of machines tearing her world apart. Could it be true? Was the human a traitor? But then she remembered something else. The moment when the beast lowered its head. The sorrow in the human's eyes. She shook her head. She didn't know what to believe. Later, in the silence of her room, the widow heard a new sound. A soft, low hum like metal breathing. She stepped into the corridor and saw them. The human, sitting with the beast in the shadows. His hand rested on its armored back. The beast lay still like a loyal hound. She dared to speak. Why does it stay with you? The human looked up. His voice was quiet, almost sad. Because I gave him a choice. No one else ever did. The widow's heart ached at those words. A choice. She thought of her own life. How the war had stolen her choices. Her family, her peace. Could it be the same for this creature? But before she could speak again, alarms screamed through the station. Red lights flashed. Guards shouted orders. The wall shook with the sound of engines outside. The widow rushed to the nearest viewport. Her breath caught in her throat. Out in the black void of space, shadows moved. Warships. Not friendly. The whispers had been right. Fear spread like fire. Some cried. Some prayed. Others blamed the human aloud. You brought them here. It was a trap all along. But the widow turned to the human. His jaw was tight, his eyes burning with something fierce. They found us, he said. And they will not stop. The beast rose, metal plates glowing brighter, its growl rumbling like thunder. The widow's fear returned, but so did something else, a spark of hope, strange and dangerous. Maybe the human was right. Maybe the beast was not the enemy. Maybe it was the only shield they had left. The station shook with fear after the sight of enemy warships. People ran through the corridors, shouting orders, grabbing supplies, hiding children. The widow stood among them, frozen between two worlds, fear of the beast and the strange trust growing inside her. The human walked calmly, the creature at his side. Where others saw a monster, he saw something different. His voice was steady, but his eyes were sharp with focus. They will come soon, he told the guards. Your walls will not hold. You need him. The guards snarled, raising their rifles. We need nothing from you, one snapped. And especially not from that thing. The widow could feel the fear in the air. It pressed against her chest, heavy as stone. The whispers from the crowd grew louder again. Words like traitor, spy, and killer swirled like knives. But fate does not wait for whispers. The moment of truth came in the food hall. Hundreds of refugees gathered there, some eating, some arguing, most waiting in silence for news of the warships. Children sat close to their mothers, wide-eyed and trembling. The widow carried a basket of bread, trying to focus on small tasks, trying to silence her own fear. Then it happened. A sudden crash shook the hall. A heavy beam fell from the ceiling, sparks flying. Screams filled the air. The refugees scattered in panic, and the creature leapt. Its huge body lunged across the floor, claws scraping metal. Aliens shouted in terror. Guards raised weapons, fingers tightening on triggers. Mothers clutched their children, pulling them back. The widow froze. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. The beast's glowing eyes locked on her. For one endless second she was sure her death had come. But instead of striking, the creature twisted its body and slammed into the falling beam. Metal shrieked as the beam broke against its armored back. Sparks exploded, burning the floor. The creature crouched low, protecting the widow. She stared in shock, inches from its glowing eyes. They were not filled with hunger. They were not filled with rage. They were filled with something else, something almost gentle. Gasps filled the hall. The guards froze, their rifles still aimed but their hands trembling. The human stepped forward. His voice was calm but carried through the chaos. Now you see. He does not attack. He protects. The widow's hand shook as she touched her chest, trying to calm her racing heart. She whispered without meaning to. He saved me. The whispers of the crowd shifted, confusion replacing fear. Some lowered their weapons. Others still glared with suspicion. One shouted, "It's a trick. He's training it to make us trust him." But the children who had been close to the falling beam now peeked from behind their mothers, their eyes wide, not with terror but wonder. The widow slowly stood taller. Her voice, though quiet, broke the noise. "I saw it. He chose to shield me. He is not a weapon. Not today." The words spread through the hall like a spark through dry grass. Doubt grew in the hearts of those who had shouted loudest. The human placed a hand on the beast's head. It rumbled low in its throat, but it was not anger. It sounded almost like pride. Still not all were convinced. The station leader, a stern alien with cold eyes, stepped forward. "This changes nothing," he said. "A beast is still a beast, and soon, war will return to these halls." The widow looked at him, her voice trembling but strong. "Then maybe we should ask, who do we trust more? The whispers of fear or the truth we see with our own eyes?" Silence followed. Heavy, uncomfortable, but powerful. That night the station was different. No one slept peacefully. But the story spread fast. The beast saved the widow. Some believed. Some doubted. But the seed of trust had been planted. The widow sat alone in her small room, staring at her hands. She could still feel the heat of the creature's body shielding her. She could still see the sorrow in the human's eyes. Was she a fool to trust them? Or was she the only one willing to see the truth? Before she could answer herself, the door to her room creaked open. The human stood there, shadowed by the dim light. "They will not forgive him easily," he said quietly. "But what happened today? It was real." The widow looked at him, her voice soft. "Why does he protect me?" The human's eyes lowered, and for a moment pain flickered across his face. "Because once, he failed to protect someone else." The widow's breath caught. She wanted to ask more, but the human turned away, leaving her with only questions. The beast waited outside her door, silent, its glowing eyes watching, not threatening, just waiting. The widow lay awake that night, her heart torn between fear and trust, between danger and hope. She knew the warship still lurked outside, and whispers of betrayal would only grow louder. But one truth stayed clear in her mind. The beast had chosen to protect her. And that choice meant more than any rumor, secrets in the shadows. The station pretended to return to normal, but nothing was normal anymore. The whispers had changed since the food hall incident. Some said the beast was a guardian. Others insisted it was only waiting for the right moment to kill. The widow walked the halls, feeling eyes on her back. Some looked at her with pity, some with suspicion. But a very few, looked at her with quiet respect. She had stood beside the human and the creature. That made her different now. Still, doubt gnawed at her heart. At night she lay awake, listening to the hum of the station's machines and the faint growl of the beast somewhere in the distance. Trust was not easy. Not when the enemy warship still hovered outside, silent and waiting. One evening she saw the human walking alone. He carried no weapons, only a dim lantern. The beast was not with him. He moved through a service corridor where the lights flickered weakly. Something about his steps, quiet, careful, pulled her curiosity. She followed. Down and down, deeper into parts of the station she had never seen. The walls grew old and rusted, painted with marks of forgotten repairs. The air smelled of oil and dust. Pipes rattled overhead like bones. Finally, the human stopped before a wide steel door. He placed his hand on a hidden panel. With a groan of old hinges, the door slid open. The widow's breath caught in her throat. Inside stretched a vast chamber. Dim lights blinked like stars in the dark. Rows upon rows of cages lined the walls. Most stood empty, their bars bent, their locks shattered. Chains lay broken across the floor. She stepped inside, her legs weak. The air was heavy with the scent of old rust and something sharper, like burned metal mixed with blood. "What is this place?" she whispered. The human turned, surprise flashing in his eyes. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his shoulders sagged. His voice was low, heavy with memory. "This is where they were kept." "The others," the widow's stomach twisted. "Others, you mean?" "Yes," he pointed at the empty cages. He was not the only one. There were hundreds. Her hands shook as she touched one of the broken chains. It was thick, stronger than iron, yet snapped clean apart. She imagined hundreds of beasts like the one she had seen. Huge, armored, unstoppable. Her voice cracked. Where are they now?" The human's jaw tightened. Some were destroyed in the war. Some escaped, some... He shook his head. "No one knows." The widow's blood ran cold. If more of those creatures were free, wandering across worlds, what horrors could they bring? She looked at him sharply. "Why save this one? Why not let him die with the rest?" The human's eyes grew dark. His voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. Because he was different. He refused the commands. When they told him to kill, he would not move. When they ordered him to destroy, he turned away. They beat him. They tore into his body. But still he refused. The widow's lips parted in shock. She glanced back at the empty cages, imagining the pain, the experiments, the endless suffering. For the first time, she did not see the creature as a monster. She saw it as a victim. Her voice softened. "And so, you saved him?" The human nodded slowly. "I could not let them erase the only one who chose mercy." The widow's chest tightened. A silence fell between them, broken only by the distant groan of pipes. She wanted to speak, to say she understood. But before she could, a sound echoed from the far end of the chamber. Metal scraping. Both turned sharply. From the darkness between the cages came a low growl. Not the beast's, but something deeper, older. The widow's heart raced. Shadows moved where the light could not reach. The human grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "We're not alone." The growl grew louder, followed by the clang of heavy steps. Something else was here. Something left behind. The widow's breath came in gasps. "Another one?" The human didn't answer. His eyes narrowed, his hand gripping the lantern tighter. Then silence. The shadow stopped moving. The growl faded. The widow clung to the human's arm, her body trembling. Was it real? The human's face was grim. If one cage was not empty, then we may be too late. The widow's knees weakened, but she forced herself to stand tall. If there was another beast loose inside the station, no whisper, no rumor could prepare them. As they left the chamber, the widow turned back one last time. The broken cages loomed in the dark like open mouths, hungry and waiting. She knew then that the creature she feared might not be the greatest danger. The true threat was whatever else still lurked in the shadows, unseen, unknown, waiting for the right moment to rise. Betrayal at dawn. The dawn cycle never truly looked like dawn inside the station. The lights simply brightened a little, shifting from pale blue to pale white. But that morning the widow woke to a different kind of brightness. Red lights flashing, alarms screaming, voices shouting in terror. She sat up, her heart pounding. The floor trembled beneath her feet. Somewhere far below, an explosion thundered through the walls. The beast's growl echoed down the corridor. She grabbed her coat and ran outside, joining the flood of refugees racing toward the central hall. Fear spread faster than fire. "What happened?" someone cried. "Is it the warships?" Another shouted. "They've breached the station!" The widow pushed her way through the crowd. Guards barked orders, rifles raised, but their voices shook with fear. And then she saw him. The human, standing in the middle of the hall, the beast at his side. His face was hard, his voice steady, but she could see the storm in his eyes. "They're inside," he said, and someone opened the door for them. The widow's blood ran cold. "A traitor." The words cut through the noise like a blade. The crowd gasped, whispers hissing from every mouth. Someone had betrayed them. Someone had chosen survival over loyalty. The leader of the station stepped forward, his sharp features twisted in fury. "Who?" he demanded. "Who let them in?" Before the human could answer, another explosion shook the hall. The floor split, dust raining from above. Refugees screamed, clutching their children. And through the smoke came armored shapes. Enemy soldiers, their faces hidden behind dark helmets, weapons glowing with deadly light. The widow's breath caught. The war had arrived, chaos erupted. The guards opened fire, the air filling with blasts of energy. Refugees scattered, running for cover. The beast roared, its voice shaking the walls, and leapt into the fight. The widow ducked behind a column, her heart racing. She saw the beast tear through the smoke, its metal plates glowing, its claws ripping into armored enemies. But she also saw the fear in the eyes of her people. To them, the beast looked no different from the invaders. "It's attacking us," someone screamed. "No, it's fighting them," another argued. Confusion spread like poison. And in confusion, fear turned into anger. A group of aliens pushed toward the beast, weapons raised, not at the enemy soldiers, but at the creature itself. "Kill it! End the danger!" The widow's voice tore from her throat before she even realized. "No, stop. It's protecting us." Her words were swallowed by the noise. The aliens fired. Blasts of energy hit the beast's armor, sparking against its glowing plates. The creature roared in pain but did not turn on them. Instead, it lunged at an enemy soldier, shielding a group of children behind it. The widow's heart ached. Even as they shot at it, the beast chose to protect them. The human fought like a shadow through the smoke, his rifle sharp, his movements precise. He shouted at the guards, trying to rally them. "Hold your lines! Don't waste fire!" But the station was crumbling. The invaders pushed forward with brutal force. More explosions rocked the walls. Fire spread. The smell of smoke and burning metal filled the air. Then the widow saw it. The traitors. A group of aliens in station uniforms, but their movements too calm, too practiced. They slipped through the chaos, dragging heavy crates toward the docking bay. She caught a glimpse of what was inside, shackles, reinforced cages. Her breath stopped. They weren't just letting the invaders in. They were offering the beast to them. Rage boiled inside her chest. She pushed through the crowd, shouting at the human. "They're trying to hand him over. The traitors are in the bay." The human's eyes snapped to her, then to the crates. His jaw tightened. "Of course," he muttered. "They think if they give him up, the war will pass them by." The widow shook her head fiercely. "They'll sacrifice us all." Before he could answer, the beast roared again, its massive body colliding with enemy soldiers, breaking their lines. But blood dripped from its side, glowing against its metal plates. It was strong, but not unbreakable. The widow's chest tightened. If the traitor succeeded, if the beast was captured, the station was lost. The human grabbed her arm. His voice was hard. "You wanted to know why he trusts me? Because when no one else would stand with him, I did. Now if you believe in him, if you believe in me, you'll stand with us." Her heart pounded. Her fear screamed at her to run. But she remembered the food hall, the broken cages, the sorrow in the beast's glowing eyes. She nodded. "Then let's stop them." Together they turned toward the docking bay. Behind them the battle raged on. Smoke, screams, fire. The beast roared like thunder. But in the widow's heart, fear gave way to something stronger. Not hope, not yet, but choice, and once again she chose to stand. The station was burning. Flames licked across the ceiling. Smoke twisted through the halls, turning the air black. The ground shook with every blast, every clash of weapons, every scream of the wounded. The widow ran with the human, her lungs heavy, her legs weak, but her heart refusing to stop. Behind them the beast roared. Its massive body crashed into enemy soldiers, claws ripping through armor, jaws snapping with steel-breaking force. Sparks flew from its plates as blaster fire struck, but still it pushed forward, shielding children, blocking fire, driving fear into the invaders. The widow had never seen such fury. And yet in that fury she saw loyalty. It did not fight for itself. It fought for them, but not everyone believed. As the battle raged, she heard voices cutting through the chaos. "Kill the beast before it kills us all." Don't trust the human. He brought this here. Some of their own people raised weapons against the human and the creature. Even as invaders stormed the station, the widow's heart broke. Fear was blinding them more than fire, more than smoke. The human's voice rang out above the chaos. Look around you. He's not your enemy, he's your shield. But his words were drowned by gunfire. The widow ducked as blasts scorched the wall above her head. She turned and saw enemy soldiers breaking through another corridor, pouring into the station like a dark flood. Her hands shook, but she picked up a fallen rifle. She had never fired one before. Still, she raised it, her breath trembling. The human glanced at her, his eyes sharp but steady. Stay low. Aim at their armor joints. You can do this. She nodded, though fear shook every bone in her body. She pulled the trigger. The rifle kicked hard, nearly knocking her down, but the blast hit true. An enemy soldier staggered back, sparks flying from a broken joint. Her heart raced. She had done it. The human gave a brief nod, then turned back to fire with deadly precision. He moved like he belonged in war, but his eyes carried more than skill. They carried pain. The widow wondered how many battles he had fought, how many times he had seen people die. And yet here he stood, not running, not hiding, fighting for strangers who cursed his name. The beast's roar snapped her back. She saw it slam into a squad of soldiers, scattering them like broken toys. But blood, thick, glowing blood, poured from wounds along its side. Its steps grew heavier, slower. No, the widow whispered. Not now. She ran toward it, ignoring the smoke, ignoring the fire. She reached its massive head. Its glowing eyes locked on her, and for a moment she felt something that stole her breath. Trust. You can't stop, she whispered fiercely. We need you, the beast growled. Low and weak, but it rose again, standing tall, shaking the ground beneath it. Then came the traitors. Through the chaos, the widow saw them, those who had bargained with the enemy. They dragged heavy cages into the hall, their faces cold, their eyes sharp. They weren't just betraying the beast. They were betraying everyone. The human shouted, "They'll lock him away. Stop them." But before he could move, enemy fire cut him off. He ducked behind cover, returning blasts with grim focus. The widow's pulse hammered in her ears. No one else was close enough. No one else could stop the traitors before they reached the beast. It had to be her. Her legs shook as she ran. Bullets of light sizzled past her, burning holes in the walls. She shoved through smoke, her rifle clutched tight. She fired, missing once, twice, but the third shot struck true. One of the traitors fell, his crate crashing to the floor. The others turned on her, weapons raised. Her heart nearly stopped. But before they could fire, the beast leapt, crashing down like a living storm. Metal shattered. Chains snapped. The traitors screamed as they were crushed beneath its fury. The widow fell back, gasping. The beast stood above her, its sides bleeding, its breath heavy but alive. It had saved her again. Around them, the battle still raged. Fire spread. Refugees screamed. Enemy soldiers pressed closer. The walls shook with the thunder of war. The human ran to her side, grabbing her arm, his face fierce with urgency. We can't hold much longer. We need to reach the control room. If they take it, we're finished. The widow nodded, her chest heaving. She looked at the beast, towering and wounded but still burning with fire in its eyes. Then we go together, she said. The human gave a tight smile, rare and grim. Together. The three of them, widow, human, and beast, turned toward the smoke-filled corridors leading deeper into the heart of the station. Behind them, chaos burned. Ahead of them, the last fight waited. And though fear pressed heavy in her chest, the widow felt something stronger rising beneath it. Not just survival. Not just duty, defiance. For the first time since the war stole her life, she was not running. She was standing, fighting, and she was not alone. The station was breaking apart. Metal groaned like a dying beast. Fires raged through the corridors, filling the air with choking smoke. Alarms screamed, their shrill cry mixing with the roar of blasters and the thunder of explosions. The widow ran with the human, the beast at their side. Every step shook with the sound of war. Refugees fled in all directions. Guards fell under enemy fire, and the walls cracked as if the whole station was ready to collapse. At the far end of the corridor stood the control room. The door, once sealed and strong, now bent inward under the pounding of enemy soldiers. Sparks flew from the panel. The invaders were seconds from breaking through. If they take the control room, the human shouted over the chaos. It's over. They'll own the station, the people, everything. The widow's chest tightened. She looked at the beast, its sides bleeding, its body shaking with every breath. Yet its glowing eyes still burned bright. They reached the door just as the enemy forced it open. Black-armored soldiers surged inside, weapons blazing. The human dove for cover, firing back with sharp precision. The widow raised her stolen rifle, her hands trembling but steady enough to pull the trigger. Blasts flew, sparks rained, and the air filled with screams. Then the beast charged. Its roar thundered through the control room, louder than alarms, louder than war. It smashed into the soldiers, scattering them like broken dolls. Armor split under its claws, weapons cracked in its jaws. But with every strike, its wounds deepened. Blood glowed across its body, dripping like liquid fire. The widow screamed, "No! You'll kill yourself." But the beast did not stop. It fought with everything it had, not for itself, but for them. For her. The human pulled her close, shouting over the noise. "We can't hold them forever. The only way is to overload the core." Her heart lurched. "That will destroy the station." His face was hard, but his eyes burned with grim resolve. "Better we burn it than let them take it. If the core goes, their warships go with it. They'll never see it coming." The widow's knees weakened. Destroy the station? Thousands of lives were inside. But as she looked around, she saw truth. There was no escape. No ships left, no reinforcements coming. They were already trapped. It was the only choice. The beast slammed the last soldier to the ground, then staggered. Its massive body trembled, its glowing eyes dimming. It turned toward the human and the widow, blood dripping from its jaw. The widow's throat tightened. "If we do this, none of us survive." The human's jaw clenched. His voice dropped low. "Maybe not. But if we don't, no one survives." Silence fell between them, broken only by fire crackling and metal groaning. For a moment, time slowed. The widow looked at the human. His face was scarred, worn, but steady. She looked at the beast. Its eyes, though dim, still held her gaze with something unshakable. Trust. Her own fear melted into something stronger. She nodded. "Then we end this, together." The human rushed to the core controls, fingers flying across the panel. Sparks burst as he ripped wires and forced overrides. Warnings flashed across the screen. Critical overload imminent. The widow stood beside him, firing at the last invaders clawing through the door. Smoke choked her lungs. Heat burned her skin, but she refused to fall. The beast dragged itself closer, blood pouring from its wounds. It pressed its massive body against the broken door, holding it shut as more soldiers tried to force their way in. Every slam shook the room, but it did not move. It was the wall between life and death. The widow's eyes blurred with tears. He's buying us time." The human's voice was rough. "He knows what's coming." The countdown began. 1 minute, the walls shook harder. Explosions rocked the station. Refugees screamed in the distance. But inside the control room, there was only 3 of them. Widow, human, and beast standing against the storm. The widow grabbed the human's hand. Her voice cracked. "If this is the end, thank you. For not leaving us." He looked at her, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. "I didn't come here to leave anyone, not him." "Not you." The beast gave one last roar, shaking the room to its core. Its eyes met the widow's, glowing faint but fierce. And she understood without words. It was saying goodbye. The core screamed. Light burst across the room. The widow whispered, "Together." And then the world became fire.